Hello guys, you're watching Play It Right, and today we're going to explain the rules of Nemesis by Awaken Realms. Nemesis is a survival sci-fi horror adventure for 1 to 5 players with a very cinematic feel to it, which takes place inside of the spaceship Nemesis. The situation is that there is a critical system failure and the ship might not be able to return back to Earth safely, and one of the crew members was found dead in his hibernation chamber. Also, the ship is full of alien intruders that might infect or kill the players, and at the same time, each player has a secret goal to achieve that might be in conflict with other players' goals. But let's take everything from the beginning and let's start with the setup of the game. You lay down the board, which is the map of the ship. You shuffle all the room tiles marked with the symbol 1 and place 5 of them face down in the spaces marked with the 1 around the central room, which is the hibernation chambers, and return the remaining tiles to the game box. Then you place all the room tiles with the symbol 2 face down and randomly on the remaining room tile slots. On each of the room tiles on the board, you place an exploration token. Then you shuffle the flight coordinates and place 1 card face down in the cockpit and the flight direction marker on the space B. This shows the coordinates of the planet the ship is directed to, and the coordinates card gives the planet name for each of these coordinates, which is different for every game. Then you place the escape pods in these spaces according to the number of players. I'm preparing a game for 3 players, so we will be placing 3 escape pods. Now, divide the equipment cards into 3 decks, shuffle them, and place them near the board. You do the same for these decks as well: Contamination, Panic, Intruder Attacks, Alternative Objectives, Events, Serious Wounds, and Special Equipment cards. Also, you need to place a token in each of the engines to indicate if the engine is working or not. There are 3 engines in the ship. Randomly put an engine function token face down for each of them. Now it's time to set up the crew. Randomly select one of the characters to be the crew member who died in hibernation and place 1 corpse token in a hibernation chamber. This character and all the cards related to him are out of the game. Get the turn order cards for this game from numbers from 1 to 3, shuffle them and deal 1 to each player. From the primary objective cards, use only the cards indicating the number of players of the game and discard the ones referring to a higher number of players. Then shuffle them and deal 2 to each player. According to the player turn order cards, each player chooses 1 available character and takes the according action cards: the starting equipment cards, the character sheet, and a model. Now, each player selects 1 of the objectives he was dealt and discards the other. Each objective is secret, so keep this card face down. Then, all players place their models in the hibernatorium, shuffle their action cards, and draw 6 of them. Now we need to prepare the intruder board. As you can see, it shows the different types of intruders and their symbols. You place 8 egg tokens in the egg pile. You shuffle the intruder weakness cards and place 3 of them on the board. This is the intruder bag, which includes the intruders present on the ship. Place 3 larva tokens, 1 young specimen token, 1 queen token, and 3 adult specimen tokens, together with an additional 1 for each player in the game. In a 3-player game, there are in total 6 adult intruders. Last, you keep the wooden token within reach to be used for noise rolls and ammunition, together with the fire tokens, malfunction tokens, bulkhead doors, and the dice. One important thing to note is the time track. The first 2 rows track the number of turns after which the autopilot makes an automatic jump to the ship's destination. When that happens, all characters that did not escape through an escape pod or that they are not in the hibernation chamber, they die as a result of the extreme G-force caused by the jump. The last row is a countdown to self-destruction of the ship if activated. If either tracker reaches the end of their track, the game ends. The goal for each player is to complete their personal objective. If during the game for some reason their objective becomes unattainable, Each player has one chance at the beginning of their turn to abandon that objective and draw a new one from the alternative objectives. But apart from completing your objectives, you need also to survive, as there is no point in completing your goals if you cannot make it back to Earth safely. For most characters, one of their goals is to make it to Earth alive. That can be done either by using the escape pods or the hibernatorium. Other goals can be to instead make it to Mars alive, or make sure a specific other player is killed, and many other different goals. There are two important conditions for Nemesis to reach Earth safely. The first is the flight coordinates for Earth to match the flight direction marker. The second is 2 out of the 3 engines of the ship to be working in order for Nemesis to make the hyperspace jump successfully. So there can be more than one winners in a game of Nemesis, but it's also possible that everybody loses if the self-destruction counter reaches the last space and no one managed to escape through an escape pod. In each round we have the following 3 phases: Player's Phase, Intruders Phase, and End Phase. Starting with the Player's Phase, the player with the highest ranked character starts, which is the captain if he is in play, and then the rest of the players continue in clockwise order. In that phase, players try to explore the ship in order to complete their objectives. Then we have the Intruders Phase, which includes the intruder attacks and the intruders moving. During the end phase, the players have to deal with some special events occurring, and they have to resolve some fires in the ship. At the end of the round, all players replenish their hand, and they move the time tracker one space further. Before I explain all the phases of a round in detail, we need to see how a character explores the ship. When entering a room for the first time, you turn the tile face up, as well as the exploration token. The token's number refers to the number of items you can find in the room, and you need to place the room tile in such a way that the arrow on the board points to the side with the appropriate number of items matching the exploration token. In this case, it's 4. Every time you search this room, you rotate the tile one number down until it reaches 0 when you cannot search it anymore. A room without any intruders or any crew members in it is considered empty. When you step into an empty room, whether it's explored or not, you need to check for noises in the room by rolling the noise die. Unless there is no noise at all, when you roll a number, it indicates the corridor from which the noise is coming, and you place a noise token on that corridor. If there was already another noise token there, or in the case you roll the exclamation mark in the noise roll, then this equals a sudden attack from an intruder. Back to exploring the room tile. Together with the number on the exploration tile, you will find one of the following symbols. Silence means you don't need to make a noise roll. Damages, place a malfunction token on the revealed tile, and unless you fix the damage with an action card or tools, you can't use the room's action. Blocked bulkhead. Here you need to place a blocked bulkhead door token on the corridor from which you came, as the door behind you shuts. Signs of intrusion. Upon entering the room, you see claw marks on the walls and there is a strange smell, so someone must have been in this room recently. This means you need to make the noise roll twice. Fire. The room is on fire and you need to place a fire token on it. So, summing up when exploring a new tile. You turn it face up and in the right way to indicate the room items. You look at the exploration token and act accordingly depending on the symbol. And before you can do any of your actions, you need to make a noise roll. In the player phase, each player gets his turn and he can do as many actions as he wants until he passes. To perform actions, players use cards from their hands by discarding them, and they may use these cards to perform 3 types of actions: basic actions, special actions, and room actions. The special actions are the actions described with text on the action cards. To search a room, for example, I need to discard this specific card. The basic actions are actions you can do by discarding any one of your action cards, regardless of the text on it. The basic actions you can do are the following. Movement. You can move your character to an adjacent room by a corridor in which the door is not blocked. If there are other players in the same room, they can choose to follow the active player, and they need to discard one card as well. If there is an intruder in your room and you want to move to another room, then you need to perform an escape action instead of a regular movement. When escaping, each intruder in the room attacks you, and if you survive the attack, then you can move your character to an adjacent room of your choice. After performing the escape action, you must make a noise roll. Another action is using items, either one use or multiple use, and you can pick up heavy objects, which reduces your action card hand limit by 1. And the remaining basic actions are passing items to other players and shooting. When shooting, you need to have a weapon and always have to discard ammunition tokens to use it. When you want to fight but you have no weapon, you can have a desperate move of using any object in the room as a weapon, and this is the close combat action. The difference with the shooting action is that in close combat, if you fail to shoot the intruder, you immediately get a serious wound. Last, there are the room actions that allow you to perform the actions listed on each room tile, as long as the room doesn't have a malfunction token on them. As always, you need to discard one card from your hand, or 2 in some cases if it's a longer action. When a player can't or doesn't want to perform any more actions during their turn, they pass. When passing, you may discard any number of cards from your hands, and then your turn is over. When all the players have played their turns, then we go to the Intruders Phase. There are 3 possible ways of encountering an intruder. Either by entering a room where there is an intruder, as a result of the noise roll, or through the effects of an event card. In the first case, the character is aware that something is coming, but in the other 2 cases, the intruder jumps at them unexpectedly through the dark, so that might cause panic. So they need to draw a panic card. So whenever you encounter an intruder, you randomly take a token from the bag and place its model on the board, and if it's anything other than a larva, you take a panic card. If it's a larva, you get a contamination card and the larva attaches to your character, meaning that it's following you around anywhere until you kill it, and you put its token on your character sheet. For the panic cards, you need to perform a panic check to see if you need to suffer the effects of the panic card. If you have on your hand less cards than the difficulty of the panic card, you fail the panic test. You must do the effect of the card and you put the panic token on your character sheet. As long as you keep having the panic token, you will keep failing all subsequent panic tests unless you manage to discard it with a special action. When you're fighting an intruder, you make a roll with the attack die. This one represents a failed attack, and only in the case of the close combat, it gives the character 1 serious wound. This one deals 1 wound to the intruder, regardless of the type of intruder. And this one 2, except for when rolled in close combat, in which case it just deals 1. And finally, there are these 2 symbols that correspond to the types of intruders. If the result of the die includes the icon of the intruder targeted with the attack or smaller, it receives 1 wound. Otherwise, the attack misses. Now, Intruder's death is a bit tricky because there is no set toughness value tied to a particular intruder, except for the larva that requires 1 hit to die. When dealing damage to an intruder, you mark it with tokens and then you draw an intruder card. If the intruder has wounds equal to or higher than the number at the upper left corner of the card, then you manage to kill it. If not, it's still alive and you have to keep fighting. After your next hit, you get a new intruder card and see if the new total damage is now enough to kill it. If the intruder you're fighting against is the queen or her breeders, then instead of 1 intruder card every time, you have to draw 2 and sum up their toughness value. Sometimes it's possible for an intruder to retreat. If you draw an intruder attack card containing the escape symbol, you draw an event card and move the intruder to the direction determined on the card. Last but not least, as a result of encountering intruders, players may get contamination cards, which they have to add to their character's action deck. These will effectively make their turns harder, as they cannot be spent to pay for actions, and also they might be the reason why a player loses the game, but more on that later. After the end of the player's phase, we move to the Intruders phase, where players need to resolve all intruder attacks from intruders that are in the same room as the characters. Players resolve each room in a predetermined order according to the numbers listed on the main board above the rooms. If the intruder is a larva and the player had failed to kill it up to that point, the larva infects the player, so you need to discard its token, and you put a young specimen token on the player's character sheet. All other intruder attacks force the player to draw intruder attack cards for each intruder. If the drawn card shows the symbol of the attacking intruder, the attack was successful and you resolve the text effect. If not, the attack failed and nothing happens. If there is more than one intruders in a room, the intruders will attack the player with the least amount of cards on their hand. At the end of the Intruders phase, players need to check for fires. If there is a character in a room that is on fire, he gets one serious wound, and one wound gets each intruder as well if they are in a burning room. Fires don't affect the characters in hibernation chambers. After the fires, the first player draws an event card, which dictates if any intruders move and any events the players need to face. After that, we move to the end phase. At the end phase, you need to move the time marker one slot forward. If any of the markers reaches the last space of the track, the game ends immediately. Also, players draw up to 6 cards from their action deck, except for those carrying heavy objects, which then their hand limit is reduced by 1, and those having a serious wound on their torso. If any player is in combat, meaning sharing a room with an intruder or having larva token on their character sheet, or being in the nest, they draw only 2 cards, ignoring hand limit. The wounds that the characters get can either be light or serious, and each is represented by a damage marker. When all your light wounds have tokens on them and you need to take one more, discard all the tokens and draw a serious wound card. You can always dress a serious wound as a result of a specific room action or by having bandages, and then you need to flip the serious wound card face down. You are still wounded, but the wound no longer hinders your actions. Each player can have up to 3 serious wounds. With the 4th one, you're dead. During the game, the characters can study the intruders they face. When a player chooses to do that using the laboratory, they reveal an intruder weakness card, which allows the players to gain a small advantage over their enemy. On board the Nemesis, there is a limited number of escape pods, which is one of the 2 ways you can escape. The other one is being in the hibernation chamber during the jump. Players may unlock the escape pods manually, or the pods will unlock automatically when another character dies, or when someone engages the auto-distraction sequence. In Nemesis, you cannot shoot at your fellow crew members or act directly against them, but there are some indirect actions you can do that they can still harm them, like activating self-destruction when people are still on board, or throwing a grenade in a room to attack an intruder, but it happens that there are other people there too, or cutting someone off in a burning room, and so much more. At the end of the game, which is signaled by either of the time trackers, each player reveals their objective card. All players that manage to complete the objective and also they're still alive, they have one more step to go through to see if they won. They need to check all the contamination cards from their action deck with the scanner. If any card indicates that the character is infected, The player places a young intruder token on his character sheet. If he already had one, he goes to the next step. He shuffles his action deck and draws the top 4 cards. If any of these is a contamination card, then this means that during hibernation, this character died, giving birth to an intruder. If none of these are contamination cards, then the character makes it safely to Earth. And that was Nemesis. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy the game.